Hey everyone, and welcome back to Librarian Oasis. I'm Joshua.
And I'm Eleanor.
Today we're diving deep into Emily Oster's Cribsheet, a data-driven guide to better, more relaxed parenting, from birth to preschool.
We think it's a fantastic resource for new parents and anyone looking to approach parenting with a more evidence-based lens.
Definitely. We highly recommend grabbing a copy if you haven't already.
It's packed with insights, and we'll be referencing it throughout our conversation.
So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Perfect. So where do we begin with this treasure trove of parenting data?
Well, Oster kicks things off with part 1, in the beginning. Those first few days and weeks that can feel both exhilarating and utterly terrifying.
Yeah, I remember those days. Everyone had advice, but it often felt more like opinions than facts.
Exactly. And that's where Cribsheet shines. Oster replaces the old wives' tales and the shoulds with cold, hard data.
Empowering parents to make informed choices based on evidence, not just hearsay or societal pressures.
It's all about finding what works best for your family. And that journey starts with understanding the facts.
So let's jump right in with Chapter 1, the first 3 days. This chapter really dives into the nitty-gritty of those initial postpartum experiences, starting with something that I know stressed me out, newborn weight loss.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. It seems like every new parent worries about whether their baby is gaining enough weight.
Right. But Oster lays out the averages, helping you understand what's typical for both vaginal and cesarean births.
And she points out that formula-fed babies tend to lose less weight initially than breastfed babies.
So that rigid 10% weight loss rule that many hospitals use,
Yeah.
not always accurate. It's all about context.
Instead of panicking, consider your baby's delivery method, how you're feeding them, and talk to your pediatrician.
Absolutely. It's about informed decision-making, not unnecessary anxiety.
And speaking of potentially anxiety-inducing decisions, Oster tackles the circumcision debate in this chapter.
Ah, yes, that's a big one, and often a very personal and sometimes emotionally charged decision for parents.
But instead of dictating what parents should do, Oster presents the data on both sides.
The risks, the benefits, the prevalence, it's all laid out there, empowering parents to weigh the evidence and make the choice that aligns with their values.
She encourages parents to ask themselves, what are the actual risks here? And how do those risks compare to other everyday risks?
It's about putting things into perspective and making informed choices based on facts, not just fear or social pressure.
Then there are those newborn blood and hearing tests. They might seem routine, but Oster explains why they're so crucial.
They're looking for a range of conditions that can be effectively treated if caught early.
Like phenylketonuria or PKU.
Right, PKU. It's a genetic condition that prevents babies from breaking down a specific amino acid. If it's not detected and addressed early, it can lead to serious developmental problems.
But thanks to those screenings, doctors can intervene and adjust the baby's diet, preventing those complications. It really highlights the importance of those seemingly simple tests.
Absolutely. They're a vital part of ensuring a healthy start for your little one.
Moving on to Chapter 2. Wait, you want me to take it home? This is where Oster injects some much-needed humor into the equation, sharing her own hilarious experiences with conflicting advice.
This chapter had me laughing out loud. It's so relatable for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of parenting advice out there.
It turns out even experts get bombarded with conflicting opinions.
Remember the anecdote about going up and down stairs with a newborn?
Oh yeah. She got totally different instructions from everyone she asked.
One person said to go up backwards, another said to go down sideways. It's enough to make your head spin.
It just goes to show even the simplest things can become a source of stress when you're a sleep-deprived new parent.
Absolutely. And then there was the whole mitten injury thing.
Mitten injury.
Yes. I never even considered it before reading Cribsheet.
You mean those tiny mittens they give you at the hospital to prevent babies from scratching themselves?
Exactly. It turns out those mittens can actually be a safety hazard if they're not used correctly.
That's a perfect example of how Oster encourages us to question everything, even seemingly harmless practices.
Data over dogma. It's about thinking critically and making informed choices based on evidence, not just tradition.
And let's not forget the classic swaddling debate. To swaddle or not to swaddle, that is the question.
Swaddling can definitely help some babies sleep better by limiting those jerky movements that often wake them up.
But, as Oster points out, there are also potential risks, like overheating and hip dysplasia.
So it's all about weighing the benefits and the risks and making the choice that feels right for your family.
And of course, she provides the data to help you make that decision.
That's the beauty of Cribsheet. It gives you the information you need to feel confident in your choices, even if they go against the grain.
And finally, we reach Chapter 3. Trust me, take the mesh underwear. This chapter is a breath of fresh air because it tackles the often overlooked topic of postpartum recovery.
Yes. We need to talk more about the physical realities of childbirth.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and Oster doesn't sugarcoat it.
She normalizes those experiences, assuring new moms that things like bleeding, discomfort, and even those mesh underwear are all part of the process.
It's okay to not feel like a superhero right away.
Exactly. And it's okay to ask for help and support. This chapter also delves into the emotional side of postpartum recovery, discussing baby blues and postpartum depression.
Which, as Oster points out, are very common and treatable conditions.
Recognizing the symptoms and seeking professional help is crucial. There's no shame in taking care of your mental health.
It's just as important as physical health, especially during such a transformative time.
And remember, you're not alone. Many women experience similar challenges, and there's support available.
So that wraps up Part 1 of Cribsheet. We've covered a lot of ground from those first few days in the hospital to bringing your baby home and navigating those initial weeks.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Let's take a break here and come back. Back with Part 2 of our deep dive into Cribsheet.
Ready to tackle the first year?
Oh, absolutely. Bring on the sleep deprivation and the milestones.
This is where things get really interesting and maybe a little controversial as Oster dives into some hot-button parenting topics.
Like Chapter 4, breast is best. Breast is better. Breast is about the same. This one really challenges that traditional mantra.
You know, I went into this chapter with my own set of assumptions about breastfeeding.
I think we all do, right? It's often presented as this black and white issue.
Exactly. But Oster really digs into the data, teasing apart the short-term and long-term benefits. And frankly, some of it surprised me.
Me too. I mean, I always knew breastfeeding was good, but I didn't realize how nuanced the research actually is.
Like, the evidence for short-term benefits, like reducing ear infections and gastrointestinal issues, is pretty strong.
But the claims about long-term benefits like increased IQ and reduced risk of obesity, those are much less clear-cut.
And that's not to say breastfeeding isn't beneficial, but it's about understanding the complexities and looking at the whole picture.
Right. There's so many other factors that influence a child's development.
Socioeconomic status, parental education, genetics. It's a good reminder to be cautious about jumping to conclusions.
Correlation doesn't equal causation, as they say.
Exactly. Just because breastfed babies tend to have certain outcomes, it doesn't mean breastfeeding is the sole cause.
And I think Oster does a great job of highlighting that throughout the book.
Oh, absolutely. And she tackles another sensitive topic in this chapter, breastfeeding and SIDs.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotions surrounding that issue.
Studies do show a correlation between breastfeeding and a reduced risk of SIDs.
But those studies often don't account for other factors, like socioeconomic differences or variations in safe sleep practices.
Right. So while breastfeeding might play a role, it's not a guarantee. And it's important to focus on all the safe sleep recommendations.
Like placing your baby on their back to sleep, using a firm sleep surface, and avoiding loose blankets and bumpers.
And if you choose to breastfeed, Chapter 5, Breastfeeding. A how-to guide is a treasure trove of practical advice. Seriously. It's packed with evidence-based tips on everything from latch-in positioning to boosting milk supply.
And what I really appreciate is how Oster addresses the challenges and even the emotional toll that breastfeeding can take.
Right. It's not always this beautiful, effortless experience that we often see portrayed.
And the pressure to breastfeed can be immense, especially when you're struggling.
Oster normalizes those struggles and reminds us that fed is best, whether it's breast milk or formula.
A healthy, thriving baby is the ultimate goal.
Speaking of healthy babies, Chapter 6, Sleep Position and Location, delves into the sometimes confusing world of safe sleep guidelines.
Oh yeah, those guidelines can feel overwhelming, especially when you're sleep deprived and just trying to keep a tiny human alive.
Right. I remember feeling like I needed a PhD in safe sleep just to put my baby down for a nap.
But Oster breaks it down in a way that's easy to understand, explaining the evidence behind the recommendations.
Like why back sleeping is so crucial for reducing the risk of SIDs.
And why it's important to avoid loose blankets and soft bedding. She also tackles the controversial topic of co-sleeping.
Which, let's be honest, can be tempting for exhausted parents.
Oh, absolutely, especially in those early weeks when you're barely functioning.
But Oster lays out the data on the statistically significant increased risks associated with sharing a sleep surface with an infant.
And it's not about judging or shaming anyone's choices. It's about giving parents the information they need to make informed and safe decisions for their families.
Right. And then we have Chapter 7, Organize Your Baby, where Oster explores the age-old question, do baby schedules actually exist?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember scouring the internet for the perfect baby sleep schedule.
Me too. And feeling like a failure when my baby didn't adhere to it.
Oster brings some much-needed sanity to this topic, acknowledging that those picture-perfect schedules we see on social media are always realistic.
She delves into the research on infant sleep patterns, helping parents manage expectations.
And while she does talk about the potential benefits of early bedtimes and consistent routines,
She emphasizes the importance of flexibility in finding what works for your individual child.
because, let's face it, babies don't always read the parenting books.
And sometimes you just have to go with the flow.
And finally, we reach Chapter 8, Vaccination. Yes, please, a topic that's incredibly important, especially in today's world.
Absolutely. And Oster presents a clear and concise overview of the science behind vaccines.
Highlighting their safety and effectiveness in preventing serious and sometimes deadly diseases.
And she doesn't shy away from the controversy surrounding vaccines, addressing the history of the anti-vaccination movement.
She debunks common myths and fears, providing parents with the evidence-based information they need to make informed decisions about their children's health.
It's about protecting not only our own children, but also contributing to herd immunity, which helps safeguard those who are more vulnerable.
And with that, we enter the exciting, sometimes chaotic world of toddlers.
Buckle up, part 3 is coming up next. Stay tuned.
We're back and ready to dive headfirst into the world of toddlers with part 3 of Cribsheet.
Oh yes, toddlerhood. It's a whole new ball game full of boundless energy, curiosity, and those infamous tantrums.
I can already feel the chaos bubbling up.
But don't worry, Oster equips us with data-driven insights to navigate the stage with a little more grace and maybe a little less stress.
Fingers crossed. So Chapter 9, Stay-at-home mom, stay-at-work mom, jumps right into a dilemma that many parents face.
It's a big one, right? Should one parent stay home? Should both parents work? There's no easy answer.
And Oster acknowledges it right off the bat. It's a deeply personal decision with no right or wrong answer.
It's about finding what works best for each individual family, and that might look different for everyone.
Exactly. But Oster does provide some valuable data on the impact of parental work on child development.
And one of the key takeaways: quality childcare is essential.
She really dismantles that idea that a child's doomed if mom or dad works. It's more about the quality of the time spent together and the overall environment.
Right. And let's not forget about the economic considerations. Childcare costs can be astronomical, so it's important to weigh those factors too.
It's about looking at the whole picture, your family's values, priorities, and individual circumstances.
Finding the right balance for everyone involved.
And speaking of childcare, Chapter 10, Daycare or Nanny, helps parents navigate the often overwhelming world of childcare options.
I remember feeling so lost when I was first researching childcare options for my son.
It can be a jungle out there. So many factors to consider.
Daycare centers, nannies, home-based care. How do you even begin to choose?
And Oster breaks it all down, examining the pros and cons of each option, looking at the research on child development outcomes in different settings.
And once again, she stresses the importance of quality childcare.
Regardless of whether it's a daycare center or a nanny, the quality of the care is paramount.
And she offers some great tips on how to find the right fit, considering things like location, backup options, and even those dreaded sick days.
It's about finding a place where you feel comfortable and confident leaving your child in their care.
And where your child can thrive.
Now, on to Chapter 11, Food. Glorious food. Get ready for the battleground of picky eating.
Oh yes, the food battles. They're real.
Every parent I know has faced this challenge at some point.
It's like a universal rite of passage.
But Oster comes to the rescue, exploring different approaches to introducing solid foods, from traditional purees to baby-led weaning.
That's right. And I was surprised by her take on baby-led weaning and choking risks. Turns out, studies show that it's no riskier than traditional spoon feeding.
It's more about giving babies the autonomy to explore different textures and develop their feeding skills at their own pace, of course, with careful supervision.
And she also offers some evidence-based strategies for dealing with picky eating, which I know a lot of parents will appreciate.
It's about patience, persistence, and offering a variety of foods without forcing it.
Because ultimately, we want our kids to develop a healthy relationship with food.
Now brace yourselves, folks. We're heading into Chapter 12, Potty Training. It's not that complicated.
Is it really not that complicated? Because my experience was anything but simple.
Well, Oster tries to demystify the process, discussing different approaches from the 3-day method to a more child-led approach.
And she makes it clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's about finding what works best for your child and your family's lifestyle.
Some kids might be ready at 18 months, others not until 3 years old.
Right. And she offers tips on managing accidents and handling those common challenges like poop refusal.
Because accidents will happen. That's just part of the process.
And remember, patience is key. Don't pressure your child. Just keep encouraging them.
Now, on to the topic that I think every parent dreads: discipline.
Chapter 13. Discipline. Effective, not infuriating. This one can be tricky, especially with those strong-willed toddlers.
Tantrums, meltdowns, boundary pushing. It's enough to make any parent question their sanity.
But Oster, as always, takes a data-driven approach, exploring evidence-based methods for managing behavior without resorting to punishment.
She dives into the research on the negative impacts of spanking, highlighting how it can be harmful to a child's development and doesn't actually improve behavior in the long run.
And instead, she advocates for positive discipline techniques that focus on teaching, consistency, and building a strong parent-child bond.
It's about setting clear boundaries, redirecting unwanted behavior, and using natural consequences when appropriate.
And most importantly, remembering that discipline is about guiding and teaching our children, not about controlling them.
Now we're in the home stretch, folks. Part 4, the home stretch, tackles the preschool years and beyond.
Starting with Chapter 14, Preschool. Is it worth it? A question that I know many parents grapple with.
Preschool can be expensive, so it's natural to wonder if it's really necessary.
Oster examined the data on the benefits of preschool, weighing the costs and benefits for academic and social development.
And she highlights the importance of finding a program that's a good fit for your child's individual needs and learning style.
Because not all preschools are created equal. Some focus on academics, while others prioritize play-based learning.
It's about choosing a program that aligns with your family's values and your child's temperament.
And Oster also touches on the concept of preschool readiness, helping parents determine if their child is truly developmentally ready for that next step.
Because starting preschool too early can sometimes backfire.
It's about making sure it's a positive experience for your child.
And then we come to Chapter 15. Does having kids ruin your marriage?
Oh, this is a big one, right? It's the elephant in the room that nobody really wants to talk about.
It's taboo, but it's also a reality for many couples.
Parenthood can be incredibly stressful, and that stress can definitely put a strain on relationships.
Oster doesn't shy away from this topic. She acknowledges that marital satisfaction often takes a dip after having kids.
But she also offers some evidence-based strategies for maintaining a healthy and strong partnership through it all.
Like making time for each other, even if it's just 15 minutes after the kids are asleep.
And prioritizing communication, talking openly and honestly about your needs and feelings.
And let's not forget about self-care. It's not selfish, it's essential for both partners to prioritize their own well-being.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
And finally, we reach the last chapter of Cribsheet, Chapter 16. One is enough. Or more.
The age-old question of family size. A decision that's filled with so many emotions and considerations.
Financial factors, emotional factors, lifestyle factors. It's a lot to weigh.
And Oster explores it all, looking at the research on the pros and cons of having 1, 2, or more children.
But ultimately, she emphasizes that there's no magic number. The right family size is different for everyone.
It's about what feels right for you and your partner, taking into account all those individual circumstances and values.
And she even touches on the sensitive topics of infertility and secondary infertility, offering resources and support for those facing those challenges.
So there you have it, our deep dive into Emily Oster's Cribsheet. We've covered a lot of ground from those first few days as a new parent to the complexities of toddlerhood and beyond.
We've explored the data, challenged some common assumptions, and hopefully equipped you with some new tools and perspectives to navigate this crazy, wonderful journey of parenthood.
It's been a great conversation, and we highly encourage everyone to pick up a copy of Cribsheet and delve even deeper into the world of data-driven parenting.
Remember, parenting is a journey, not a destination. And there's no one right way to do it. So embrace the ups and downs, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to seek out evidence-based information along the way.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive with us, and we look forward to exploring more fascinating topics with you in the future. Until then, happy reading, happy parenting, and stay curious.